For my presentation, I will be going over cilantro. For my part of this presentation, I will go over its culture and care, its fertilizer requirements, its pests and diseases, and its common growing problems. So let's get into it. So for culture and care of cilantro, the cilantro plant is, the whole entire cilantro plant is edible. That is why it's mostly grown for its foliage, other than its seeds. Cilantro prefers a full sun location and average well-drained soil. It usually does not thrive if there is flooded irrigation, because it usually causes a plant to fail and it causes molding in the plant. Cilantro is principally planted and harvested in Central and Southern California and southwestern Arizona. Cilantro is most often associated with Hispanic and Oriental foods. Typically in Mexican dishes, it is used in salsas and seafood. As in this picture, you can see that the cilantro was blended. As you can see, parts of cilantro in the salsa, as it then is topped off with a cilantro. Also, with the Mexican American medicine, cilantro is used in teas. To harvest cilantro all season, successive sowings every 2 to 3 weeks need to be made, starting in late spring. So usually around this time, is when they do that. For its fertilizer requirements, once the plants are established, they do not need as much water per week, but you want to keep them moist, but be careful not to overwater them, as it can cause failure in the plant. To fertilize, you want to do it once or twice during the growing season with nitrogen fertilizer, or as it's named here, an all-purpose fertilizer. You want to apply a 1/4 cup of fertilizer per 25 feet of row, but you always want to be careful not to over-fertilize it, which it can then cause damage to your crops, and then it can cause failure. Cilantro usually prefers a soil that is slightly acidic. So that's why we use this all-purpose fertilizer, which is a balanced 10-10-10 water soluble fertilizer. And you usually want to use this fertilizer after the plant reaches about 2 inches tall. Moving on to pest and disease control. The first disease we will go over is a bacterial disease, and it is called bacterial leaf spot. The symptoms of this disease is a very well water-soaked spot. You will see very small water-soaked spots between the leaf veins, which enlarge and turn dark brown. The stems may also be enlonged and have dark streaks. It usually turns yellow or brown, and it has water-soaked lesions on the leaves. This is a bacteria. The disease is transmitted through infected seed and can be spread by splashing irrigation water and rain. So say you're irrigating and you have this disease in your field. If one plant has it, then it's most likely once you irrigate, the whole field will be contaminated. For the management of this bacterial leaf spot is usually difficult to control, though that's why you avoid overhead irrigation, and you try not to work with the plant when they are wet. The next disease is a soft rot. It usually has small water-soaked lesions near the base of petioles, which become soft and sunken brown. It's a bacteria. The process of this is that bacteria thrive in oxygen-depleted plant tissue. The disease emergence requires long periods of water-saturated soil. And this bacteria enters plants through wounds. So say the tractor or someone is going through the field, steps on a plant and breaks it, that is when the bacteria will enter the plant and cause damage. Management for this disease is usually to plant the cilantro in well-draining soils. and then allow plants to dry before irrigating again. And to also avoid wounding plants during the harvest so the disease will not cause damage. For viral disease, it is called a carrot moltly dwarf, but it's a combination of carrot red leaf virus and a carrot mottle virus. The symptoms of this is that it will have yellow and red leaves, and this will then stunt the plant growth. It's a virus, and this disease is usually transmitted by aphids. If both viruses are not present, then this will not happen. But if they are, then this will cause the carrot moltly dwarf. For the management of this disease, they usually want you to avoid planting the cilantro in close proximity to overwintered carrot fields. So planting cilantro next to carrot fields, you will most likely get this disease and have failure in your plant. The next disease is a fungal disease. It's called damping off Pythium spp. This disease, the symptoms is a soft, rotting seeds which fail to germinate. This usually has a collapse of seedling after they emerge from the soil caused by water-soaked reddish lesions. This is obviously a fungi. For the process, damping off diseases favor conditions which slow seed germination. This fungi can be spread in water, contaminated soil, or equipment. So always make sure that once you have your field, to make sure the soil is not contaminated, to make sure your equipment is not contaminated, and if you were to have this fungal disease, that you do not want to irrigate, because then it will spread and you will then have an entire infected field. To manage this, they usually want to avoid planting in poorly drained, cool, wet soil. That's why you want to plant in raised beds that will allow soil to drain. You want to plant high quality seeds that will germinate quickly. And to treat this, you can also use fungicides to eliminate the fungal pathogens. The next one we'll go over now is pests. We'll go over aphids, which they are small-bodied insects, and they are usually on the underside leaves or stems of the plant. They're usually green or yellow in color. If there's a heavy infestation of aphids, it may cause the leaves to be yellow. These aphids secrete a sticky, sugary substance called honeydew, which encourages the growth of sooty mold on plants. Aphids are insects. The process of this is that you have to distinguish features that include presence of cornicles, which project backwards from the body of the aphid. For the management of this is that reflective mulches such as silver-colored plastic can deter aphids from feeding on plants. Sturdy plants can be sprayed with a strong jet of water that usually knocks the aphids off the leaves. But you can also use insecticides that are generally only required to treat aphids if the infestation is very high. But if not, then you can do the water spraying. The next one is an armyworm, and for the symptom of this, it's a singular or it's a closely grouped circular, two irregularly shaped holes in the foliage. The heavy feeding is usually done by young larvae that leads to skeletonized leaves, and they will be shallow, dry wounds on the leaves. Usually for the egg clusters on the cilantro plant, or the leaves, it will be up from 50 to 150 eggs that may be present on the leaves. They're usually covered in a whitish scale, which gives the cluster a cottony or fuzzy appearance. This armyworm is an insect. The insect of this is that this insect can go through 3 to 5 generations a year. So say you were to have this worm or this insect in your field and you do not treat it, it will go through generation and reproduce and cause multiple damage in your field. For the management of this, you usually use organic methods to control it by using the application of Bacillus thuringiensis. There are chemicals available for the commercial control, but many that are available are not as adequate to control the larvae. And last but not least, the common growing problems for the cilantro is excessive moisture and poor air circulation most often causes a problem. So in this picture here, you can see yellow in the cilantro plant, usually caused by, over irrigating, and the plant is consuming more water than it should, which is causing it to fail. To prevent leaf spot you need to make sure that the plants are grown in well-drained soil and are not overwatered. You also need to make sure that they are thinned out enough to allow good air circulation around them. So to have a successful crop, you obviously want to make sure that you have all these steps, and you want to make sure that this cilantro is not over irrigated, because it will cause failure and not allow it to grow. And so that is the end of my part of the presentation. I hope you enjoyed, and thank you.